It's not often that the world sees a living legend, someone whose work changes the landscape of their field before their very eyes. But that's exactly what we have in Bobby Messano. Bobby has been in the music industry for over 40 years as a guitarist. He has seen some of the biggest bands rise to stardom, and even knew some of the artists while they were just kids. His influence can be seen all over the world in bands like Metallica, Poison, Eric Clapton, and tons more. Bobby joins us for a special in-person interview to talk about his experience in music and how he has managed to stay not only relevant, but influential all these years. We hope you enjoy hearing Bobby's story on this episode of The Big Break.
Bobby, thank you for appearing today on The Big Break.
Absolutely welcome. I'm glad I'm here, and I will be coughing all day.
Okay, well, fair enough. And you're actually one of the few guests on the podcast that we actually have the pleasure to see in person. So now help me out. You live in Denver? You live part-time in Denver?
No, I live in Fort Collins.
You live in Fort Collins?
Yes.
Oh, well, there's a big music scene in Fort Collins, actually.
Yeah, it's actually very surprising to me. It's. I was saying that yesterday. I was in Nashville on the weekend. It's very surprising. I mean,
they actually, I think, created a music district.
They have
there.
A music district. They have. They have a lot of good stuff going on. They have the new West Fest. They have a recording studio there. They have a great radio station there. It's a very, very hip town, other than the trains.
I don't think I've ever heard Fort Collins described as hip before, but actually, when you think about it, with the piece of music, you got the Fat Tire, the New Belgium Brewing Company.
Oh yeah.
But we'll get to how you got to Fort Collins in a second. So we're gonna get into.
There always escapes.
There's always something, right? We're gonna get in the Wayback Machine though a little bit here. So, well, first of all, before we even get to the origins, why don't you give us just a quick synopsis of who is Bobby Messano? Why are we talking with you today?
I have no
idea.
No concept whatsoever. It makes no sense to me. No, I'm like I was born a poor Italian child in New Jersey. No, I'm actually one of the rare people that I find these days that are like a mid-level artist, writer, producer, player that is still doing it after 44 years.
44 years, yeah.
Yeah, this is, 44 years of touring started in 1976.
And you're a guitar player primarily?
Yes, primarily a guitar player.
Okay. Any other instruments?
What's that?
Any other?
I played bass on like 7 albums, and I'm really bad, but really bad is only in your own mind. So I've done some pretty good bass stuff on.
Okay.
And I'm a producer, and I turned into a writer after years of realizing that writing is actually where you make your money. And we can go to the first time I actually realized that later on, but it was like whoa, what's this?
So performer, writer, producer. Guitar, bass, blues, Americana, this kind of thing.
Blues, yeah. You know what? And it's strange because I started out. I had the first, let's say 14 years of my career were as a rock session player and a rock touring guitar player, and that went to 1990. From 1990 until now. What's that, 29 years? Or
you want to think
whatever it is, or whatever, 19 years. I've been a contemporary blues artist.
Okay.
And I was an absolutely conscious change of sort of genre or change of career or genre. And I did that absolutely on purpose. But before that, I was known as, a guy that's did rock sessions and toured.
So. And just give me some of the big highlights. I mean, I got the bio here. I don't want to read the whole bio, but the highlights for you. Anyway.
Biggest thing for me is David Hasselhoff.
That's missing from the bio.
Oh, damn it! How could that possibly happen? Well, I mean, I got to split it up because it's strange. It's sort of like almost Nashville-y because, like in Nashville, you tour or you play in a studio, But this was, I mean, I was with a lot of people. I mean, on the rock side, I toured with Lou Gramm from Foreigner. I actually played on one of his albums, but all my guitars were erased. But that's another story. I was Steve Winwood's music director on the road.
Okay.
I played with Clarence Clemens from Bruce Springsteen on his record. I had the only solo actually on his record. There was an artist who was actually big in the MTV era named Fiona. Not Fiona Apple, but Fiona Flanagan.
Okay.
Who had a bunch of MTV hits. I was one of the guys that did the MTV theme song. Yeah, that was me. And it was cool because I was doing plus, and then on the other side, I played with Gloria Gaynor. I did a lot of people. I did a lot of dance records. I was a session guy.
Okay.
And back then it was sort of cool because I was ushered into this session scene in New York City by all these amazing players, Huey McCracken, and just people that were like slamming it, and they sort of brought me into the into doing sessions. So I worked with I was on a Peter Criss record. I worked with Vinnie Poncia, who was a major producer who had done Kiss back then, and and that was like in the middle days. In the early days, I was in a band. My big break. Hey, this is the big break.
Oh, hang on to the big break.
Here's the big break. The big break was I was a guitar player in New Jersey, and I was saying to somebody yesterday, when you were a hotshot guitar player in New Jersey, one of your rites of passages was to go hang out with Les Paul at his house in Mahwah. And so a lot of the hotshots, the good guys would go hang out with Les. And when I was 19 years old, Seymour Stein, who was, you probably heard the name from Sire Records, Craig Leon, who was the second command at Sire, wanted to sign me as a solo artist. I was 19 years old, and I was scared to death, and I was playing with these guys that were like 30. This is before, they had Climax Blues Band, they had a number of acts, but they hadn't started doing the CBGB thing. They hadn't signed Talking Heads. They eventually signed Madonna, and they became, an amazing label for the scene at the time in New York City. But when I was there, they were doing rock and blues rock and stuff like that, and that was like my entry into being into the big time because they were wooing me for quite a long time.
So this is you've got a lot of interesting kind of components of the business here. You've got performing versus writing, producing. Yeah. You've got session versus touring. I want to get into all of that stuff, but let's take a quick second. Let's go back a little further. When did you first get interested in music? When I
was a kid. My mom was a singer.
Your mom was a singer.
Yeah, and she was a dancer, and she had a duo with my aunt, and they were supposed to be on the Arthur Godfrey show back in the 30s or 40s or whatever.
So you were kind of born into it pretty much.
Well, sort of, but my mom never really got a chance to do it.
Okay.
And it was really, really weird because I was an Italian, and they really frowned on, because of the business. It was always like, well, you can't do that for the rest of your life, and
you got to get a real job. Make something.
Because I had an uncle that worked with Benny Goodman or somebody, and he got screwed back then, and look what happened to your Uncle Tom,
Yeah.
And so, it was back then, when I was in high school, I was playing guitar.
Well, how did you get into guitar? Like, when did you start actually playing music?
Well, Beatles.
Beatles? You saw them on TV?
But before that, I was listening to the Four Seasons and stuff. I'm an old guy. And we'll get into some of the cool old guy stuff that happened that you can't, that can't happen now, But, yeah, Four Seasons and the Philly Soul stuff, and I would sing in, church and, do all that stuff. And it was really it just sort of happened. And then the Beatles came out. I freaked out. I wanted to be John Lennon. I had a hanger with a harmonica on it, and my brother played guitar and gave me, I would take his guitar and play with my thumb. I couldn't play chords because my hands were so small.
Okay.
So I would play with my thumb, and then eventually I learned how to make chords, but I would duct tape my fingers to the strings.
That's dedication.
To with a book.
Right.
So that I could press it down, and I would have, have
welts and all that kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Guitar is a strange thing. Because
it's a painful instrument.
Yeah, it is. You're sticking your fingers into metal, and then sliding it around and having the pieces of metal go into the tips of your fingers. That's not fun. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. It was like really cool.
So you were doing it. I mean, kind of fun hobby, that kind of stuff. Kind of bring us. I mean, we could get on and on and on about some of that stuff. But
too much.
At what point was it just something that you did for fun to something that you think you might actually be able to do and make money?
Well, I mean, I always wanted to do it. I mean, that's the dream of a lot of people.
Sure, of course. I mean,
and I always say, 99.5% of the entire world since the beginning of time would never be able to do this. It just doesn't happen. It's dedication. It's learning your craft. Well, especially back then, you really had to, and pushing forward and sticking to it. And that's an impossible thing to go through.
It's a tall cliff to climb. So that's what I'm trying to get is when did you see that cliff and think, yes, I can scale that?
Well, I mean, I was actually I had gone to college and for a minute, very expensive college in Maryland. And started playing in this band back there that Paul Newman's son Scott was in, and they had just kicked him out.
Okay.
And I took his place, and then we moved back to New Jersey. It was in Maryland. I went to school in Maryland, and then I moved back to New Jersey. We had a band house, and we were writing all these songs. And I said, God, I want to do this.
What was the name of the band?
I can't remember.
You can't remember, okay.
No, but it was all really great people. A couple of them went on to do some major things.
Sure. Anyone we know?
Yeah, one of them is a producer.
If you don't want any names, that's okay.
I have to go back and think about it. Most things I can remember. This was like a very strange... it was after the drug-induced college life,
Understood.
And I lived with a dealer in Maryland. So, I really wanted to do it, but I realized when I was back in New Jersey that it was really difficult to pay bills and write music and attempt to, because we weren't doing cover songs and stuff. We were just doing... So I went to work for the post office, because my father worked for the post office. Mm-hmm. And I figured, well, I guess I should make some money and do something. So I worked for the post office for a couple of years until I was... sort of the same thing with, another gig. I just went, I hate this. I was working these really weird hours, but I was playing still, and I was actually playing in cover bands.
So the working at the post office was giving you the income that allowed you to play the cover bands at night, basically, to do what you wanted to do.
Yes, except then I would go from the post office, from the cover gig to the, it wasn't for too long, but right to the post office.
Right.
And I actually just, at one point, I was so upset working that I just said, I can't do this. I have to. It was pretty ballsy. Mm-hmm. I said, I have to make a move here. Mm-hmm. And that was like in 1975.
And what was the move?
The move was, I'm going to look for people, because I did know people, being a guitar player in New Jersey and being close to New York City. So, I sort of knew people. And I had already gone through the Sire thing. Mm-hmm. So they were always there sort of nudging and helping. And I just said, I can't do this. I actually got fired from the post office, which is impossible.
Right. You really got to make an effort.
Absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
And then I went on unemployment, which is also impossible because I had a doctor that said, he can't do this. He has to be on Valium or whatever it was. And I actually, what I did was I searched. I said, what can I do? So Billy Joel was looking for a guitar player. I think it was either Dave or Russell was thinking of leaving. Henry Gross, who had been in Sha Na Na, and had he had a big hit single called Shannon. He was looking for a guitar player. Rick Derringer was looking for a guitar player. The proximity to New York really helped. Mm-hmm. You can't do this when you're in Dubuque.
Right.
You can't do it when you're in, Sarasota, Florida, unless you're part of the Allman Brothers scene, and they weren't even really there then. So, right. And then there was another band, this band Stanky Brown. That was managed by this guy named John Scher, who ran the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey, and was one of the biggest promoters in New Jersey. and he managed the Grateful Dead at the time, and he managed the Allman Brothers. And this is a cool band. They were on a label. They were on Sire.
Okay.
Actually, and Sire went to them and said, "Listen, Bobby's the guy."
So let's go back quickly to the Sire component, because that was the real big pivot point. So before you got hooked up with these other folks, it was Sire. So what was the initial contact?
Well, the initial Sire contact was, we would all shop demos. Mm-hmm. So I had sent Sire, I guess, demos at the time, and they freaked out. They loved it. They loved my voice. They loved the songs. They loved my guitar playing. And at the time, it was Sire, and it was, oh God, I still know
another label.
It was another label. It was the one that had Bad Company, Swan Song.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it was Peter Grant. Was that Peter Grant? I think. Yeah, it was Swan Song. But they were sort of talking to me at the same time too, because they had Bad Company and I think they had Zeppelin at the time. It was like they were very associated with Zeppelin. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. I guess I must have, you send your cassettes out at the time, and somehow it made it through whatever it was with them throwing it in the garbage, which is what they did with everything.
Okay.
Or there was someone that said, you need to check this out.
So this wasn't like a personal. It was literally throwing that demo into the void that is the demo void.
No, back then it was just in the pile with everything else.
All right, so they call you in, you start a conversation with them. I'm sure there's some other little details along the way, but eventually this leads to them seeing another opportunity that they connect.
It was the Stanky Brown thing. Yeah, initially they wanted to do the deal, and then they pulled back from the deal, and we were involved with this for quite a while.
What's quite a while? Months,
6 months.
6 months,
maybe. It was a while, and then they finally went, "Oh, we don't know if we're going to do this. We really like you," and blah blah blah. So then the next thing was they talked to John Scher and said, "This guy is really great. We almost signed them, and it would be sort of neat to have them in one a band that's already on the label." Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. So John's office called me up and said, do you want to come in and audition? And I went, yeah, sure, okay, I could do that. And the other things that had happened, it wasn't, nothing really transpired. And I went and auditioned for them, and I'm like I go in prepared. I learned like everything that they were doing live. I learned vocals. I walked in and I went, "What do you want to do?" And they went, "I don't know. You want to do a song or two?" And I went, let's do as many as you want. I went, "You want me to sing?" And they were like, "Sing." And I went, "Yeah." So we rehearsed, and we they auditioned me, and they went, "Wow, you want to be in the band?" And I was like, "Okay." And they said, "Could you, and there was another thing that happened later on in Nashville. It was like almost the same kind of thing. And they said, "Okay." And then, a week later, I was off unemployment. I was making $200 a week, or $125 or whatever it was, with health insurance, from John Scher and Monarch Entertainment, and I went on the road with them.
So you're in the band and you're on the road with them, so now you're touring.
Well, actually, and the first thing was I literally went from working in the post office to being in the back of a box truck on a mattress on top of road cases, going to a show in Pennsylvania, and the guy driving, who I'm still friends with, was a guy named Bert Holman, who went on to manage the Allman Brothers for the last 25 years, and he was the front of house guy and our road manager. And we went and did the first show I did, and I tell the story all the time, was opening for Kansas, who I had just seen like a couple of times, like the year before. Uh-huh. And I saw them opening for Queen. That's another thing that's happened. I'm really good friends with Brian May now, but I went and opened for these guys, and I remember sitting in, catering. What do I know about catering? I'm a guy that worked at the post office, and I'm sitting there like scared to death at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania going, "Oh my God, I'm opening for Kansas." And Kansas walks in, and Steve Walsh goes, "Hey, you're the guitar player that was in that band that was, that's opening for us?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "God, you sound great." And then Kerry Livgren walks over, and they're like, "Hey, want some chicken?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, Kansas is asking me if I want chicken."
So how are you dealing with that? I mean, again, you're just out of the post office. You audition for a band. Now you're on the road, and you're meeting all these. I mean, how do you keep that together without,
But there was sort of like this inherent, you sort of, I don't want to say that, certain people sort of gear themselves into becoming, I don't want to say famous, but I want to say part of the the entire piece of the industry that's at that level. And what you have to do, I know a lot of people back then, and I still know people now, youngsters, oldsters alike, that you sort of gear yourself into when you're in that situation. You know that you're in Nashville. They call it germs. A germ is a person that's like, oh my God, But when you're in the situation, if you're really gearing yourself to becoming a pro, and I tell people this now all the time still, you have to walk into a situation, and if you're, like the other night, I went to a party, Robert Plant was supposed to be there, and he wasn't, but there were other people that were there, and it's just like, hi, how are you? Because you have to be one of them.
Got it. So there's getting the opportunity, but then there's keeping the opportunity.
Keeping the opportunity.
So let me kind of just break this down for a second. So getting the opportunity was just basically doing the legwork. It was just throwing it out there and hoping something.
So you got a little bit of luck there. Right.
A little bit of luck on that one.
Absolutely.
Okay? But then once you got it, it's like, you use a sports metaphor, like you act like you've been there before.
Right. It's like being, like when you get in the game, you're in the game.
Right.
So you have to sort of just be one of them.
Right.
And if you don't do that, you put people off.
Very much.
You really do. You can't be like, oh my God, can I have your autograph?
Yeah.
I never, ever in all of these years have ever asked anyone for an autograph. Because when you're in there and you're part of that, you have to be one of them. You're a peer.
Right. Are you a musician or are you a fan?
Right. And even if you are a fan, being a peer is much better because then they take you seriously.
Okay.
And they understand that you write and you sing and you play and you're one of us. A perfect example, I don't digress, I digress the opposite way, was like when I met Eric Clapton. I met Eric Clapton with Steve Winwood. And it was just like, hey, how are you? Nice to see you, And he looked at me and went, I know who you are. And I literally went, no, you don't. and he went, yes, I do. And he named like 7 albums that I was on that he had.
That's funny because, because where you are in the industry, you're talking with folks that pay attention to that level of detail that maybe the average quote unquote fan might not. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't just listen to an album and say, hey, that's whatever band name's album, they're going to say, okay, that's that album, but they're going to know who the performer on each different instrument is. They're paying more attention.
Right.
Are you performing knowing that that's happening when you're doing that work as the insider?
As a me now, sort of.
Even then, did you know that? Did you know that people are paying attention to that level of detail?
Later on, I found out
about
it.
Okay.
Yeah, later on, I found out about it because I had a fan on my first solo album, which was actually a rock album from England, that I was bored writing the lyrics. I was at the point of like, and I had the whole record done, and I just wrote this song, and I had pieces of everything that I had done in my life as part of the lyrics. I played with Flanagan's, I played with Brannigan's, sung with Flanagan because I was with Laura Branigan.
Right.
And this guy from England, I had a fan club at that point, I had a P.O. box, sent me the breakdown of every line. And I was like, oh my God, this guy actually paid attention. Even this morning I had some guy on Facebook, because there were a couple of these bands that were turned into, bands that you wouldn't realize had that much of an influence on people, but they actually did. It was just so strange to see that. And this morning, there was a couple of Fiona posts this week, and I put this thing, so great to play on that record. And this guy went, oh my God, that solo you did on whatever song was probably one of the best solos ever played on a record. And I went, and so I found that out later. That these people paid attention.
Everyone, that's really interesting. So there's a couple of really cool lessons coming out of this. We talked a little bit about acting like you belong there and doing your thing, and then you kind of start to realize that not just the fans, but also the other artists, your peers, are paying attention to what you're doing. It's not just paying attention to how you're acting, but actually how you're delivering. So okay, so you're with the band, you're doing a lot of touring. What was the next step?
Well, the cool thing with Stanky Brown was because of John Scher. There was a lot of reach. We were the agency was Paragon, which is oh God, I can't remember his name, but he ended up managing Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Okay.
They were out of Atlanta. So we were on the road with the Allman Brothers. We were on the road with, Wet Willie, with Dickie Betts, with all these Southern rock bands. I mean, I became friends with all the guys in Boston because we opened for them the night before they played Madison Square Garden for the first time. And Brad Delp and I, God bless him, became really good friends over the years because of that. And so it was it wasn't just like an entry level thing. This is something that can never happen now. And I say this a lot, and this is not being a jerk or uppity, but what I've done in my life, and Steve Lukather is on another scale, but he's a really good friend of mine, but you can't do now. You can't play on 60, 70 records. It doesn't happen. It's just not, the industry is not the way it was.
So I guess first of all, explain the benefit of that, and then what happened. What's changed with that?
Well, the benefit of it was that you had a chance to be on everything. I could play on a Gloria Gaynor record, later on after Stanky Brown, because I could do, funk stuff. I could play with a Steve Winwood. I could play on the heaviest thing ever, and those are the benefits. You got to play on like everything.
And then this is the session work now.
Yes, this is the session work and the touring work.
Well, right. So that's interesting. So why don't you explain this for a minute? That environment for folks that might not really understand what we're talking about here. So there's the bands that we've all heard of. The bands, they have these bad members, but they often have other people either in the studio with them or on tour with them. Right. Sort of. I don't know what the right way to put it is. I don't want to say supplemental, but it's like they need more than just these four people that you've heard of or something like that. How does that work? How does that come together?
Well, I mean, they're just, I always call them the guys, the people in the trenches, but they're just extras that are in, that go play.
So how do you get those jobs? Is there like a job board?
Back then it was all word of mouth, or I would get calls from people and I'd be like, huh? And they would go, yeah, I was talking to so and so, and they said call you and you should come in and do this.
I mean, do you have like an agent?
No.
So it's literally, okay, so I like the way that sounded. I want that sound for my thing. Who's the guy that did that?
Yeah,
and they find you.
Yeah, and that's what would end up happening. They would find you because you would either be union or you would be, and again, the proximity to New York made a big difference.
Okay, so there's a community involved.
Yeah, big difference, And then I became involved in the whole LA thing, and I would go to London and do sessions and stuff. But yeah.
They find you.
They would find you, and it was actually really hip. And not, they would find you and you would turn other people like, a case in point is I was, again, we should go into songwriting at some point. This is such a cool thing because...
How regular are we talking about here? Is it once a week, once a month?
No, I was doing sessions 4 or 5 days a week, and then I would, maybe even more, and then I would finally get to the point where like, God, I want to go play live, and then I would pick up a tour.
Okay.
Someone would call me and say, hey, Lou Graham wants somebody. I would go, do I have to audition? They would go, yeah. And I would go, I don't want to. And I would go in and audition, and I'd get the gig. Daryl Hall, I was supposed to do his tour. I was supposed to do, oh, God, I love him. Colin Hay from Men at Work.
Yeah.
I got that. And then I said, I don't want to do it because I'm waiting for a Lou Graham tour. Or so I would sort of split it up because it would get to the point where I love having headphones on, and it's really nice being in the studio, and I meet all these people. Plus, I was writing a little bit more.
Right, and I want this. And now we're going to get to the writing bit. So, but first, what did you were doing both the touring work and the session work? Did you have a preference?
I would split it up. I liked both.
You liked both, but one too long got old.
Yeah, the touring back then was, you were making good money, $5,000 a week if you were with a big act. And
you were making more from the touring than the session?
No, I was a triple scale session guy in New York, so I was making really good dollars when I was doing it.
So they're both contributing.
Yeah,
you like doing them both.
Yes,
you like the flexibility.
I was comfortable doing both of them, which is a rarity.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, because you have those people that thrive on the audience reaction, and you don't get that in the studio. But I would just go, I would be able, and I'm really fast in the studio. I still am. I mean, Lemonade we did in 3 days. That's the way I work because I'm so comfortable and I love it. And I just say, here we go, and we do it.
Okay.
So which was another good thing about, me at the time because I could end up doing whatever I needed to do because people would know if they had me come in, I could do an entire record in a day and they'd save money, but they would have great stuff and sure they'd pay me, whatever it was, $3,000 a day or $2,000 a day to do it, but they would come out with, really great guitar tracks.
So when do you start realizing that it's not enough just to play other people's music for them, whether it's studio or live, and when you want to start making your own?
Actually, from the first record I was on, which was Stanky Brown, 1976, I had a song on that I wrote.
Okay.
And I had come from, it's weird because I had come from being a lead singer, lead guitar player, major, I was the sole writer, to being in bands, not singing lead, just playing guitar and doing background vocals, singing lead if somebody's voice went out, and not really writing. And, so I did one song on that. And then when I joined Stars, which is the next thing, Stars was managed by Bill O'Coin, who managed Kiss.
Okay.
I went from Stanky Brown to doing a Stars album in Toronto, Canada, with Jack Richardson, who is, to this day, one of my favorite producers. He did the Guess Who. Okay. He did Kiss. Oh, God, he was brilliant. And he became a knight in Canada before he passed away. Brilliant. And I learned all of these things with him. And then we went from that to literally going right on the road, opening for Rush on the Hemispheres tour.
Wow.
Ted Nugent on the Weekend Warriors tour. And we were number one in Billboard when the record came out, I think. Because it was Capitol Records, it was all this main stuff. And I went from being a cool player. I mean, and Stanky Brown was great.
Right.
I did the first night at Giants, the opening show at Giants Stadium in New Jersey. With the Beach Boys and Steve Miller. And,
right.
And these were things that could never happen. It was dream, your dream come true. Which even at my age, at 173 or whatever it is, this is still a dream life.
Yeah, you're still able to maintain doing it. And then that's definitely how we're going to kind of close with some of that
that's cool.
stuff. But the songwriting component that we're talking about.
Well, when I got into Stars, we went right in to do a new record. And I started writing with them. And it was harder rock stuff, but it was, poppy hard rock. But I started writing with them. So I had 2 or 3 songs on the first that Stars album, which was great. And
in terms of the because these are different crafts. I mean, we see this all the time. There's some people that can write a song. There's some people that can perform a song. There's few that can do both.
Right.
Did you? I mean, just as you started to get into the writing, did it just naturally come and it was no problem?
Oh yeah.
Was there
remember, I had been a writer before.
True, I get it. But as a writer myself, every new, as a not a songwriter, but as a journalist, every story sometimes is.
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely. And I write stories too, so I know it's
it's hard to you get the blank page.
No, this was sort of good because they were all conducive to letting me write.
Okay.
And then that band Stars, even though that was another one of those things that I learned a lesson of life, with that, and owing money and, owing millions of dollars that you didn't know you owed. And
explain that. What do you mean?
Well, when I signed with the band, I was replacing another guitar player, and I had a really good attorney in New York City, and I was reading this, I had contracts that were 8,000 pages. So I had the Rocksteady one for the production company. I had the Capitol Records one. I had the one, all these contracts. And I looked at my attorney and I went, what the hell does this mean? He went, you owe $1 million.
You owed $1 million.
Yeah, you owe $1 million when you sign this.
To the band.
To everybody.
To everybody.
And I went, why? And he went, that's the way this works. And he said, and you want to join? Then you take over the debt.
So you're taking, I'm very confused.
I was taking the debt over for the person that I was replacing.
It's like a company buying another company that's in debt. They now assume the debt as well.
You're going to assume the debt. So you can figure either they're going to be a huge band and you're going to make millions of dollars, or it'll vaporize and you won't ever have to worry about it again. And I went, oh, you want to be in the band? I went, sure. And he said, well, then sign it.
Was that a good decision?
Yeah, it actually was, because it did vaporize.
Okay.
We did find out later that we had sold enormous amounts of records way past what Capitol had told us. And it was one of those typical, if you didn't pay attention, now I pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
But we didn't know.
Sure.
And they had already had 4 albums out, and they had done fairly well, and they were all over the place, opening for everybody, and, fairly popular. And their popularity, I'll interject this real quick. Their popularity, I found out later on, was way beyond anything that I had ever expected or thought of. Because Metallica literally said there would not have been a Metallica without Stars. All the Poison, Bon Jovi, who I met John Bon Jovi when he was 17, sweeping floors. And Tico from Bon Jovi was my partner for 5 years. But they all said there were like 5 bands. I mean, Poison, Motley Crue, all these other,
influential bands.
They said this was the most influential band that we ever heard, and that's why we were here. And I never knew that until later.
That's really interesting.
It's really strange,
So the depth
was writing.
It was the writings, and that's when you realized that you're able to keep.
Yes,
because we were talking about the capital side.
I just got some money from. They had sold, the back catalog was sold to. I don't even remember. Richie Rano called me, but I just got like $1,000 just for back catalog from 40 years ago. So I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Because you were mentioning that you got to pay attention to things. Capitol was saying that you didn't. You sold more than you thought you did. But that's the sound recording side. It seems to be a little more. You tell me. Is it easier on the publishing side in terms of getting what you're owed, or is it the same? Well, you
have to pay attention. You have to see what's going on. I mean, I own all my own publishing, except like with you guys, I leased. And which is okay because I was back catalog leasing and it was great, But I now own all my own publishing, and I don't give it away unless it's for a reason or it's not going to affect me, and it's good for me.
Lessons learned along the way, for sure. So tell me if this is too large of a leap, but from Stars to your solo work.
Yeah.
Was that the next step, or was that happening on the side as well? How did that develop?
No, I was continuing to do session work, and I played with Steve Winwood on the road, and I was still doing records. And actually, mid-'80s, I started writing a lot for other people and for my first solo album. And and I was writing most of it by myself.
Well, what's that like? So that's interesting. So you've been performing and touring and session with other people. You've writing songs that you're performing yourself. What was it like writing a song that you didn't actually perform? Because that's the real outlier. It feels like.
Well, when I first started writing back then for, what would have be my first solo album, which was a rock album. Mm-hmm. I was like. It was like I was writing. It's different writing than I write now. It was writing parts of my life with things that I would think, it would be good for radio and good for people to listen to, which is the way a lot of, I don't want to say formula writers write, but a way a lot of people write because they want to make money on their music and their songs. Mm-hmm. So you have to write. I would write things that I wouldn't write now, and not that they were bad, but they were just geared towards the listening audience, and because they would be geared towards the listening audience, they would be geared towards making royalties on it from airplay and stuff.
Okay. So you're writing to the format. It's a commercial. Right. It's a commercial exercise on our system.
I don't want to say like Katy Perry does not write like that. Katy Perry writes her life, which is really cool. But people that write for Katy Perry write songs that they, like Fireworks is hers, but they write songs that they know are going to be on the air and are going to make money for everybody, and they don't necessarily, and they're not. It's not that they're shallow. It's just they're geared towards the audience of listening. There's a certain formula.
We know it works. I mean, there's some great books out there that talk about all of this that are really fascinating to read.
And there's a huge difference between writing that first record, which was geared towards the listening audience, and then geared towards making royalties from it, to writing after that when I went into my contemporary blues land.
Right.
Huge difference.
As a growing artist or songwriter, keeping royalties coming in is important for keeping the bills paid. It's also important to keep an eye on those royalty payments. A lot of people we worked with here at Royalty Exchange were having a tough time making sense of the royalties that were getting paid. So we built a free tool called Know Your Worth that automatically analyzes every royalty payment made on your music. It breaks it all down in an easy-to-understand analysis with some insights that would be impossible to find elsewhere. Plus, it connects you with the thousands of investors on Royalty Exchange and allows them to make you offers on your music. So far, musicians have raised over $1 million for new projects, new ventures, and a whole lot of other things just through the Know Your Worth app. If you're earning royalties, you should be keeping track of them, and Know Your Worth makes it easy. It only takes about 3 minutes to connect an account, and the tool will automatically update over time. Just visit worth.royaltyexchange.com or find the link in the show notes to get started. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Did one need to come? Did you have to do that first before you could go to what you wanted to do? Did you need to write what you knew was going to sell before you could write what you wanted to write?
It was. I had to, because that's what, that's what was warranted for the record. I would never write a song called "Ready to Rock Tonight." Now, but it was a really cool Bon Jovi kind of song on my first record.
Okay.
"You and I Are Forever" was this really great song that people ended up, and this was a record that, the first record didn't really do anything unbelievable, but it got rave reviews. It was on tons of rock radio stations. I was on MTV with the video, and it was a whole different thing. It's just a whole different way of approaching what you were writing, and and it was cool, but it wasn't necessarily what I would do now. Unless, even when I was writing, I would be writing for someone else or with someone else now. I always go, what are you feeling? What do you want to write about? What do you think that you want to tell people, as opposed to, what do the people actually want to hear? What do you want to tell them?
Right.
This was the time of, Slippery When Wet and stuff like that. And it was like, what do they want to hear?
What's going to sell?
That's going to make them jump up and down and scream in an arena.
Right.
So, it was a big difference.
Well, that's one of the things I like exploring with this podcast, is the idea of that there's always this sort of balance between what you have to, let's use it from the writing standpoint, but it could be really anything. Writing what you want to write versus writing what you, for lack of a better word, have to write.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they have to support each other. This is a business at the end of the day.
Right, you have to pay your bills.
You have to pay your bills.
And especially if you're a songwriter. If you're a songwriter, you need to, be able to sustain your life and pay for the kids if they need food, or your car payments or whatever. This is, it's not, I'll do anything for rock and roll. You actually have to live.
Well, it's what sustains that career or that lifestyle.
And that's what I was saying before, that 99.9% of the world, or 99.5% of the world can't sustain it, so they have to go back to working at 7-Eleven or being corporate or doing whatever. Or the post office.
Right.
The whole thing is to try to set the whole thing up to work for you as a living.
So when did that become clear to you throughout? I mean, you've had so many really interesting components of your career, more than most people that I speak to. I mean, it's almost hard to ask you the questions, because there's like three different questions for each thing.
There's so much information.
There's so much there. So when did that sort of become clear to you?
Probably around the time I started writing for that record.
Okay.
For the Messano record, which is, and again, I just had that re-release last year because this label in North Carolina called me up and said, do you realize that this is like a cult classic?
Right.
You had 5 stars in Kerrang when Whitesnake had 4, or people would send you things and say, God, I used You and I Are Forever at my wedding. He said, this is a cult classic. And I had re-released it once before, but these guys did a great job in, 12, all these pictures and a 12-page booklet. And it was really cool, but I didn't realize it. But, that's when I said, God, these are my songs. And I'll tell you a funny thing about paying attention. Mm-hmm. I had a guy that was managing me, and I had known him for a long time, but he was trying to change me over from ASCAP to BMI. And I've been with ASCAP. In fact, I was just in Nashville at NAMM, and they gave me a 25th anniversary pin at ASCAP.
Oh, nice.
And we did all these pictures, and I went, but I've been with ASCAP for 40 years, and they went, I'll live another 10, we'll give you a 50. I was like, okay, good, I can do that. But I realized at the time, because I was getting airplay, I mean, on major, that's another thing when I realized that you have to pay for things, and I was hiring all my own. I was with Relativity Records, but they weren't really putting that much money into it. So I hired all my own radio guys. And
promo guys.
AOR promo guys.
Right.
And people go, how come you never have money? And I go, well, I don't know too many people that have to spend $15,000 a week, for your radio stuff, which is what I did for 6 months. I ran out of money working my record. But the change never happened. He never changed me over from ASCAP to BMI. And I didn't really want to change to BMI because I loved ASCAP. I had been with him from 76, And I lost all of the royalties, everything, from that record on the airplay because there was nothing was registered with ASCAP because he was trying to do a BMI changeover and he never did it.
And so everything got lost in the between.
Got lost in the shuffle.
So one of the things, before we got started, we were talking a little bit, and I think this is a good time to bring it up, is that there were certain things that you sort of missed about the way the industry was back then that's still there now, but it's less so, having the support of a label, having the support of a PRO.
Right.
We still have all of that now, but it seems to be less. There's a lot of folks kind of trying to do their own thing. You yourself were doing your own thing for a while because your label wasn't supporting to the degree that you needed them to. So maybe just talk about that just a little bit in terms of what are the things that an artist can do very well in themselves, which is what are the things that are sort of nice to have that support.
Well, newer artists have the social media thing down for sure. Well, the thing that they have to avoid with any but everybody still wants to be on a label. As much as
it's a sign of success. It's a sign
I'm on a Warner Brothers label now.
Okay.
I'm with Warner's. But the thing is that everybody's doing 360 deals, and I keep saying if you hear the word 360, you walk away.
Right.
You just walk away because you have if they want you and they're going to do a 360 deal, they're going to want you and they're going to give you a deal without 360. Do not do it. But back then, one of the things that was really good and was also bad at the same time because you were in debt was the label was the bank.
Right.
The label would, like now, if I want to go out and support Lemonade and I want to bus and I want to go play shows and not necessarily make money, which nobody makes money anymore anyway, because venues are like disappearing, but they would bank you. Mm-hmm. So if you came off of 3 months on the road on a bus and you owed them $100,000, that was a small price to pay to get into markets, to have people go to the record store to buy your stuff, and open up a new market to be able to go back to later. Mm-hmm. And if you became successful, the $100,000 didn't matter.
That was promotional costs. You were making the money to whatever you could actually make after costs from the tour. The label didn't make any of that, but they looked at it as selling the record.
And that was that whole artist development thing that doesn't happen now.
Right.
Because nobody wants to put any money into anything.
Right.
Because they can get anything they want pretty much for free. We could talk about the Napster stuff and the Flax stuff and oh God, but that was one of the things that is truly missed with major labels. And one of the things I did see when Lemonade came out, which was in July, I would say within 2 hours, it was on a Flax site. It was on an illegal download site in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. And every artist, again, I'm a nobody sort of, but I'm a well-known nobody. If you do a web search for me, it's 100,000 hits.
That's your next album.
Well, no. Actually, somebody's writing a book called "He's Just a Guitar Player." But the thing is that within seconds, that was up there.
Yeah, it's like that.
And one of the things that I was always angry about is that I could never do anything about it. I would, years ago, I would offer, I would send out emails with cease and desist, and and everybody would go, "It's not doing anything."
Yeah.
But being with Warner's, immediately, they issued a takedown of the website. So every time, every weekend now, we scan, we find where the Flax sites are, and Warner's issues takedowns because they're big enough to be, granted it's going to be back up in 15 minutes someplace in Czechoslovakia or wherever else, but it's sort of a little bit of a respite where they can pull it down and maybe you can have a couple sales. Because whether you think it happens or not, there's a lot of sales that go on and downloads of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I used to teach at School of Rock, and I would talk to my kids, and I would go, they would come in with some new song, and I would go, "Did you download that?" And they would go, "Yeah." And I would go, they would say, "What?" And I would go, "If you want to do this for a living, I said, I go into the studio, and I don't do this. I don't do it in my house. I go into major studios with major musicians and make major records, and that doesn't cost, a penny. I said, so every time you download that thing, that's money that I need to pay back the money that I did my record. How would you feel about that if you went to, you're still working over at wherever you're working, and you go in and then somebody stole your money from your work?
Right.
I said, that's the problem with that.
So how do you feel about the state we're in now where, with the streaming component of things? I mean, obviously sales of all kinds are falling.
Yeah.
But it's replaced in activity at least by streaming, but
sort of.
not necessarily by...
Yeah, the prices aren't the same. I mean,
sure.
For me, I make more money on, has nothing to do with you guys.
Right.
But I mean, XM, I'm on XM constantly. And I make enormous amounts of money on XM.
So having that...
because they actually pay.
Yeah, no, they actually pay. They have to. They're in a much different, place in the licensing spectrum. But they also have that depth of niche channels.
Oh, yeah.
Niche, but like they'll play. You could find something for anything on XM.
I mean, and I even make money. Like I played on the Benny Mardones record "Into the Night" that was a big hit in 1980. I make royalties from that.
Right.
Just that there's a musicians fund that they pay into.
I got to ask this: what's your favorite XM channel?
See, I'm supposed to say Bluesville because I'm always on it, but I don't always listen to it. Believe it or not, The Bridge.
The Bridge is a good one, yeah.
Because the songwriting on The Bridge is what I listen to. And I'm supposed to be listening to Guitar Land, and I just love listening to the melodies and all the songwriting. Bridge is probably number one. And I have it in every vehicle that I have. I mean, right now I'm on the Christmas channel. So,
of course, but because you're not getting enough of that anywhere else. You have it in your car.
I don't go out. I don't go to malls and stuff. So
I just bought a new car this summer, and it came with a trial subscription, right? And I wasn't planning on keeping it at all because I have my phone, I do the Apple Music account, and I stream.
I can't live without it.
This kind of stuff, right? Little Steven's Underground Garage.
Oh yeah, I was on that.
That slayed. There was one day where that was that's it. Here,
oh, yeah.
I'm in because of that station.
I was on the Underground Garage tour because I played with the Shadows of Night.
Okay.
We did Gloria, and I produced their last record.
Okay.
And Jimmy Sans is actually still a really good friend of mine. We talk all the time. And we did the Underground Garage tour with the Romantics and Rocky, what's his name from, he was in this really cool punk band. It was 2006 we did it.
Okay.
It was really fun. And I've known Steven from, I knew Steven from the Springsteen days.
I bet, yeah.
You know what else is another great one? Deep Tracks Kills.
Deep Tracks, yeah.
Yeah, Deep Tracks is ridiculous. But there were a number of, I can't...
You just named my 4 or 5 presets, by the way.
I have 7.
Okay.
And a couple of funk channels because I want to hear,
I just had to ask that question because I drive down from the mountains on the weekends and the whole ride home is Little Steven and just listen to him and tell his stories.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we're getting way off course. Sorry.
That's okay.
But that's the fun stuff, right?
But, on the other end, it pays royalties.
Right.
If you get on it, and that's a very difficult thing getting on it. I mean, that's a story. People get mad at me because I'm on almost every day.
Why is it difficult getting on it?
I
mean, whose program is it? How does that work? Is it there some politics there?
They're very corporate. There are only a few. I mean, there are only a few people that program. I mean, there's one guy who's a good friend of mine that programs 8 stations, and he's inundated with stuff. And the reason I'm on it, I have been on Bluesville. Bill Wax started Bluesville with B.B. King in 2000.
Okay.
It went on the air on September 11th, 2001.
Okay.
So it went on the day of the attack.
Mm-hmm.
That from that week, Bill Wax was playing me. So I've been on Bluesville for 18 years.
So once you're in, you're kind of in.
I've been ushered in through every program director for 18 years.
Grandfather in a little
bit. Yeah, I'm a grandfather on the station. So it's very difficult because you have to. But I mean, you could get on. You just have to have really good product, and you have to, get through. Southern Avenue, who are friends of mine, they just got nominated for a Grammy in Contemporary Blues. Young band out of Memphis, but they did it through. They're on They're not on Motown. Are they on Motown? No, they're on. I can't remember. It's one of the labels that Stax maybe that came back up. But you could get on.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of great channels. The Jam Band channel is friggin' great. The Reggae channel is great.
So it's just a matter of just getting it in front of the right people, just like you did back earlier in your career. I mean, you got to send it out. You got to send it out.
You have to set it up. You have to get it out there. You have to work it and not give up with it.
So I like to always say, yes, there's luck involved, but there's the quote chance favors the prepared. That sort of thing. Like you gotta make your own luck to it to a certain extent. So I gotta ask this.
Yep.
So what got you to Fort Collins? Explain that one. That's a road. That's a road that I'm sure there's a story behind.
Oh God, I escaped to places.
Okay.
So I lived in. I mean, I'm not going to do all of them, but I went New Jersey to L.A. to New Jersey, New Jersey, New York. I was like 5 miles from New York, and then I went to London, and then I came back to New York, and then blah blah blah. But I lived in Woodstock, New York, for years, which was really fun because. Everybody in the band, I was friends with the band, and, everybody was still up there, and Dylan would come into town, and, I would have breakfast with John Sebastian. It was really cool. And then I went from Woodstock to the south. I went to Virginia. Went to Virginia Beach because my wife at the time wanted to go by a beach, and I'm a beach guy. Okay. So I ended up in Virginia, went from Virginia to Nashville, went from Nashville to Florida to Sarasota because I was friends with all the Allmans guys, and they were all down there. And I was going back and forth from Nashville to Florida. And then I was on the road a lot. A friend of mine was on the road. He was a drummer, and he was up in Spring Hill near Tampa. And said, come up with me. You don't have to pay rent or anything. And, I haven't had a house in a while. And truthfully, I don't want a house. The first year I was up here, I was on the road for 200 days.
Yeah, I mean, A, you're on the road, B, you're moving around so much, that sounds like counterproductive.
I had a friend that was a major Highline roadie, tour manager guy, and he had to buy 2 houses in the Hamptons so that he could waste money because he was paying like $1 billion in taxes because he was never home. But anyway, one day I came home and he said, I got to sell the house. And I went, oh. And he was on the road too. And he went, I said, when? He went, like, now? And I went, oh, that's not good. And we were both going back on the road and come back in a month. And I had friends in Denver. One of my producers, Joe Michaels, is in Denver. Okay. And they had been trying to get me out here. And then my friend Kyle is the president of the Colorado Blues Society. He said, look, why don't you just come out here and, check it out for a while, because I had thought about, I lived in London. I was thinking of moving back to London, but it's just so expensive, and I don't like New York, and Nashville is way too inundated, and I just came up here, and I sort of dug it. I mean, I miss beaches.
Yeah, I mean, you're a beach guy, you're an East Coast guy, you're talking, you've made a lot of points about being in the right places.
Yeah, but East Coast, I really haven't been there for, since 86 or something, But
in terms of just that, like, you've already made your connections, so now you can, you have the opportunity to live wherever you want. Now, you don't have to be where you were before to be part of those.
And as long as you're near a highway or a plane, you can go anywhere.
Right.
So, but I ended up in Fort Collins, and I dig it. I do miss, I really, I got friends that are like, come to California. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. It's going to fall to the ocean. There's fires.
Do you play regularly up there or anything?
No. I mean, the one thing that I've learned about living anywhere is that you're never a hero in your hometown.
That's interesting.
You very rarely, when I lived in Nashville, I never played in Nashville. I played with country people, and I played with Rodney Atkins. I played with Jimmy Wayne. I was Alicia Elliott's musical director. I played with Steve Holy, and I was making more than most people because, I was making $500-600 a show, and everybody else was making $200, but people don't always get you it's not just me, I think it's a lot of people. Like even Colorado, I mean, how much has come out of Colorado? Big Head Todd.
Nathaniel Ratliff is the big one now.
There's like maybe 5-6 bands.
Well, I was just kind of curious. I mean, if you live up there and you play, if there's something that you sort of just do.
Well, I mean, and that's the problem too. I can't, I get calls all the time to play, and I can't. I mean, like, I'm doing my last show of the year. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going to Lincoln, Nebraska for my last show, and it's like, in the blues thing, it's just really small. You don't make any money, and I used to do a lot more festivals and stuff, but I'm sort of picking and choosing now. because not that I, can afford or not afford to do it, but I cannot afford to walk out of the house for little money because it's what's, I mean, if I made like 5 times that when I was, in high school, why would I
do it now?
Yeah, I'll stay home and write and watch Netflix and, I mean, I really like my life, but I love playing live, but I can't, and I used to tell people that, do not undercut yourself, at all. And there's a new model which would go along with. Oh, I wanted to tell that story too.
I just wanted to get this.
But there's the Black Keys model.
Okay.
And that was do everything yourself. Actually, which was based on the Fugazi model, because Fugazi paid for everything, did their own shows, owned everything, and became millionaires without having to worry about anything because they did it on their own. And there's that model that works now. And if you can get into that model, Black Keys, the most, the closest to that over the last 10 years, did it all on their own, and Joe Bonamassa does it, so there's you have to do it on your own terms, and
but it also takes a lot of work. I mean, the reward is big, but so is the effort in beforehand.
Right, and you're still and you're still gonna have promoters that aren't gonna want to get you and stuff. So more questions.
Actually, I'm just asking if there was anything. What's next for you? What do you want? Anything you want to talk about, promote?
Well, we're working Lemonade. I've got. I'm going to. January is going to be cool because I'm going to drive out to LA, to Anaheim, and go to the NAMM show, which I go all the time. I've got tons of endorsements.
Nice.
And then I'm going and doing a Gary Kramer, who had Kramer Guitars. I was with them, and he's got a vineyard. So I'm going to play at his vineyard. Then I'm coming back down to LA for Grammy weekend, and I'm playing the El Portal Theater on Friday, and just a couple songs, and then doing something at the Soiree on Saturday, and then going to the Grammys on Sunday, and then coming back here, and then jumping on a plane and going to Negril, Jamaica, to headline a festival on the Sunday after the Grammys. So then I'm supposed to go to New Zealand, but I don't know what's going on.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean that's great. Like you've got, you said 44-year career, if I remember the numbers correctly. It sounds like you've been successful. It may not be the success that people who get into it now think about when they think about success.
Right.
They all think about top of the charts, the millionaires, but you've consistently made this happen.
To me, the success has always been when I was 14 years old. I wanted to be in my 60s still doing this and having people know who I am.
Right.
And I have a Wikipedia page. This is exactly what I wanted to do.
Right.
Look, I've got a BMW. I've got a 2019 Equinox. I've had 4 houses. I've had a lot of the stuff everybody else has had. But your success level is based on the people that you meet in the business and the longevity you have.
The longevity. The
longevity is really important. Because if you really wanted to do that, and I say this to my friends, but I got to tell you this one story.
Please do.
But I always say to my friends who are all like, "Well, how come we can't get limos and private planes anymore?" I go, "No, you bought into this. This is what you wanted to do." Because see, I always loved it for the note. I always used to say, "I do this for the notes." I wanted to hit one note that would move 20,000 people, and I've done that a couple of times. And I wanted to, like B.B. King, I would go see him and he would do one note and I would cry. Carlos Santana, but they would write those notes into their songs and then they'd get paid for the songs. And that was really cool. I was gonna say the first time I realized how important royalties were, I won a contest in 1990 on Blues Deluxe, which was this syndicated blues show out of Texas. Best unsigned, blues act in the country. And about 6 months later, I got a check from ASCAP for like a couple $1,000 for writer and then a couple $1,000 for publishing. I went, what the hell is this? And I realized that because it had one play on a syndicated show, it was on 170 stations, and they tracked every single one of them. And ASCAP was paying whatever they were paying at that point. I mean, now it's $25 for publisher and writer for points. But I got the points and I went, oh my God, I have to do this more, And I had a great publisher who passed away a number of years ago, Brett Walker. He was great. He's really young too. But he got me on network TV, and I was getting quarterlies of $5,000, $10,000 from One Life to Live and major, shows on CBS and stuff. And I realized this is like, talk about mailbox money. This is really mailbox money, because you could sit home and make $10,000 a quarter. I mean, I know people that make $1 million a quarter,
sure,
because you're writing these songs, and the songs live forever. You have a legacy. The legacy is the songs and the stuff you put down on tape, or whatever, and that'll never go away.
Right.
And I'll tell you this is the last story.
Yeah.
And I know we're probably over time, but
it's okay.
I wrote this song when I was going through my first divorce. It was for my first record. I was on Ichiban, which was an EMI, big label at the time. They had Driving and Crying, they had Crisscross. They were selling a lot of records in a bunch of different genres, but they had a lot of different labels,
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote this song when I was going through my first divorce, and I was on the road. I was carrying a recording gear with me, which is
big. He's putting his hands very far apart.
I had one of those Tascam 12 tracks that did it on tape, but it was cool. So I was writing stuff, and I was managed by Willie Perkins, who had managed Greg Allman, and he was with the Allman Brothers in the beginning. And I wrote this song in a hotel room because I was really depressed and I needed something for myself. And I wrote this song. It was originally called Drowning in a Sea of Hope. And I went, oh my God. I said, I can't do that because somebody could construe that as... So I just changed it to Sea of Hope. And it was Take Me to the Sea of Hope was the lyric. And it was really cool lyrics. And I was very Clapton-y. And when I did a promotional tour with the demos before I recorded the record, because Ichiban said, go out and go do some blues shows. And I was at this one place, and somebody went, that's a perfect Clapton song. And I went, oh, wow. I said, that's, it is. Because, I love Clapton, and he's one of my idols. And,
sure,
I got to meet him and hang out with him. And, so I called a friend. I said, do you have anybody working on this new Clapton album? It was a friend of mine at Disney out in L.A., and he said, yeah, actually we do. And I said, can I send overnight this to you? I said, I want you to hear this song. And they listened. They went, holy crap, this is like perfect for him. Mm-hmm. And they sent it. They called Eric and they said, hey, Bobby Messano's got a tune. And he went, send it over, So they sent it over. And he loved it and he demoed it. It was the Pilgrim record. It was in 1998, I think. But he didn't put it on the record, which was okay, because it happens, but at least you had it there. I've had stuff with Hard, I've had stuff with Robert Plant, it happens. But I put it out on my record, and a couple of years later, I got an email from this guy. He's from Czechoslovakia. And he said, they're always so polite in Europe, hello, Mr. Messano, my name is Sergey, or whatever it was, And he said, I got your record from my friend in France, and he said, it's just fantastic. He said, I love this record, And I think it was Holden Ground, which was a re-release of the original Dominion Roads. I was on another label, and we re-released it, remastered it. And he said, but I wanted to tell you something. He said, I was in a really bad way. And he said, and I was going to commit suicide. And I heard your song, and I felt that you were talking to me, and you stopped me.
That's something.
He said, and I want to thank you for saving my life. And I went, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was like, I wrote a bunch of lyrics out and put it out on a song because I wanted to save my life.
Yeah.
And I saved this guy's life, and I said that stuff doesn't happen, and I always say to people, when you're writing songs, think about who's going to listen to them if somebody's going to listen to them,
And that kind of gets down to that point you said earlier, where there's the songs you write because it's what people want to hear, and then maybe if I could rephrase a little bit, the songs you write that maybe people need to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you did in that last
and I was so surprised by that, I got a couple on that same song over the years. Thank you for writing that. You helped me. A guy from England sent me like a £5,000 check because he was rich, and he said, "I figured you could use this." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, thank you."
Yeah, no worries.
And then I thanked his solicitor, and he sent me a Bible, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." But it's really true because the words you write. And the other thing is that you can't stop writing because you feel like you're not going anywhere, or you're spinning your wheels. Because one thing that you write for yourself or for someone else could change the world, change someone's world. Mm-hmm. It's really important. It's really important. And then there's one other thing. I'll end it with this.
Sure.
I had all these friends for many years in this business that write songs, and they write great songs sometimes, and sometimes they write shitty songs. But they're so proprietary to the people that sometimes they don't let anybody hear them, mm-hmm. or they won't let something happen with it because they don't want to lose control over their work. Over what they feel is a part of them that they put into a song and put on tape. Mm-hmm. And I call them the songs in the little plastic boxes because they're all over the world. And I know, 30,000 songs a week are generated right now, something I think, like that, or something. Yeah. It's absurd. And 0.02% will ever get heard by people on the radio, which is why I'm completely blessed and always thrilled about this. But one of those little songs in that plastic box could change something, and you have to realize that if people want to put it out or change a little thing on it or do something in it, it could change your life.
And that's a perfect place to stop because that's exactly where we started, right? Yeah. You got your big break was basically you put out those cassettes.
Yeah.
You put them to the places where you thought no one's going to hear it, and they did, and it turned things around. And to this day, it's the same thing. It's allowing something to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the lesson.
And it's taking control of it and making sure you work at that.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So.
Well, Bobby, this has been a true pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. I wish we had even more time. We'll do a part 2 someday, maybe.
Yeah, I love doing this stuff. I go in and teach classes and do some stuff. Because it's really important. And the industry. I have this huge fear that within 10 years there's not going to be any real live music anymore, and people just aren't going to care. And that would just be the saddest thing that ever happened. Because this is so important, it really is. It changes. There's this Hendrix phrase, and I got to see Hendrix. Still to this day, I saw Hendrix and Joplin.
Well, if you're a guitar player and you see Hendrix.
Well, I saw him on the same night, Hendrix and Joplin.
Yeah.
And it was and it's actually on YouTube, the show I was at.
Okay.
Yeah. But, it's really important. And, and there were artists out there that don't, that want to, and there's so much shallow bullshit out there. You could stop this whenever you want. There really is. There's just so much horrible, disgusting, shallow bullshit out there.
Well, it's short-sighted. It's the confusion between doing it for the money versus the money helping you do what you want to do.
Well, and I always talk about I'm a big non-fan of rap, right? Which a lot of people are. But I was a huge fan of NWA and all the original stuff that came out of LA, because there was a point to that. That they were making a social statement back then. It meant a lot. And now it's just how many times can you say fuck at a thing or suck my dick, and it's well, what's the fucking point of that? Right. Even it's just there's a lot of really good deep stuff out there that people are writing and playing, and it doesn't necessarily go anywhere anymore.
So how can people find you, by the way, if they want to online?
Everywhere.
You're on. You got a website.
I'm everywhere. I got a website. I'm on every social media platform.
You know your handles? Is it at Bobby Messano? What's the?
Yeah. Well, anybody it has to do is just believe it or not, just do a Google search for Bobby Messano with the correct spelling, Messano, and I'm everywhere. I've been, social media guy since the beginning. I mean, I was on...
That sounds like a whole other podcast we'll have to have.
Oh, yeah, I was on MP3.com, in the early days.
Right.
And they weren't paying initially. It was just, it was cool. It was fun. And I was in between the Ichiban deal and or maybe it was the Fishhead deal. Fishhead was with, Ichiban was EMI, Fishhead was with,
right.
I can't remember. But, I was, in the middle, in between them, and I was like, where am I going to get this out? So I put it on mp3.com. I was #1 on contemporary blues for like a year. I was in the top 10 with like 12 songs and #1 for literally a year, and they weren't paying. And I was like, I don't care. The people were still hearing my stuff, and then they started paying, But I was involved in the original IPO on that, and, there's a lot of, I'm a geek. I'm like literally, I had an IT company, and, when I was in Nashville, when I wasn't on the road. And,
well, I've got, again, these are all great
I love
great topics for another one. I'm seriously, we'll do one in a couple of months.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah,
maybe it'll be easier drive when it's not so terrible weather.
No, it actually wasn't bad. I mean, we had more snow than you guys, so it was like. And I came home yesterday morning. I'm like, the BMW was like, there was like 4 inches of snow, and I was like, what the hell is this? It was like, yeah, we got snow yesterday. I was like, well, this was great.
It was great. Say goodbye to the folks. To be
goodbye,
continued.
Everybody. We'll see you soon. Keep writing, please. Do not stop being musicians or writers, because it's just so good for your soul and so good for the planet. So please don't stop.
All right. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. To keep up with Bobby and his music, check out his website and social media profiles linked in the show notes. New episodes of The Big Break will resume in the new year, so stay tuned for our upcoming releases in January. But until then, have a great holiday, and we'll see you next time.